I know that we have a quorum, but I believe we're waiting on the chair to join. He should be joining soon. Janine.
Yes, hello.
Hi, as the vice chair, do you want to establish a quorum by doing roll call
Happy
to get this started while we wait for Garrett to join?
Yes, sounds good.
Thank you.
So hi, everybody. Janine Grace. We're going to go ahead and do a roll call. And Lori, I assume somebody there is checking off names as they indicate they're here.
We will, as you do a roll call vote, we will ensure that they are here and that we have a quorum, and we will be able to know exactly who is in attendance and who is still trying to join or will miss today.
Sounds good. Barbara Barney Knox.
It looks like she is not on yet.
Okay. Carmen Costi. Morning, Carmen. Karen Rizal.
Here. Good morning.
Morning, Karen. Hazel Torres. I'm going to ask twice because I'm a big offender of leaving my mute button on. Hazel Torres, if you're here, check your mute. Jacqueline Bauman. Joanne Spitz.
I'm here.
Hi, Dr. Spitz. Kathy Hughes.
Janine, really quick. It looks like Hazel Torres is in the participants. I'm not sure if she's having any difficulty unmuting.
Hazel, do you have an opportunity to check the mute and call in for roll call?
Yeah, I also don't see her camera activated. So I'm not sure if she might have some audio or.
Is there an option for this meeting?
Is there a what? I'm sorry?
An audio option, a call-in number?
I believe there is, and it is on our agenda, but I just want to make sure, let me check real quick. Board moderator, when Hazel joined this prior to the meeting, did we do a mic check and a camera check?
Didn't respond to me.
She did not?
She did not respond to me.
Okay.
When she joined. She was one of the first two to join.
Okay. Board staff, can we reach out to Hazel Torres, please, and troubleshoot to see if she is having audio or camera issues? And then I did see that Garrett was able to join, but we'll let you wrap up the roll call, Janine, and then we'll transfer to Garrett.
Sounds good. We left off with Hazel and Jacqueline and Dr. Spetz and Kathy Hughes.
Kathy Hughes. Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Kim Dow. Linda Pham. Seiji de Guzman. Sandra Miller.
Here.
Tammy Van Holt. Tanya Altman. And Lori's on and I'm on. Garrett, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Let's get a mic check and everything on our board legal counsel, Reza Pejruhesh.
Good morning, everyone. This is Reza Pejruhesh, BRN Legal Counsel.
Thank you. Okay, we did establish a quorum. We are reaching out to Hazel as we speak, Garrett, to make sure that she is able to join. We are missing BBK, Jay Bauman, Kim Quang, and Tammy Van Holt at this point.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. For some reason, my WebEx was rearranging the chairs for 5 minutes. So there are not that many chairs here today. So thank you, everybody, for your patience. And thank you so much, Janine, for doing the roll call. Let's go ahead and move to the next agenda item, please, which is general instructions for the format of a teleconference meeting. So Mark, please.
Is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the committee reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. You are free to ask the committee your questions, and they will reply if they can at that point, or to answer your questions, or open up a discussion, however you would like to handle it. Garrett, I guess I should ask that question. When we were first started, we cut it down to this, but I've noticed in the meetings past that we're starting to have discussion and answer questions. So you can control that as best as you want. I just want to put that out there that you guys will respond. So please respond. Thank you.
This is Reza. Also, on that issue, the board's attorney. On the issue of questions being asked of the committee, we open it up to public comment. So members of the public who are in attendance are free to comment or question or really say whatever it is that they want. Questions are not necessarily guaranteed to be answered either for a variety of reasons. It could be timing. It could be, a lack of present knowledge and ability to answer the question. It could be a variety of things. But as our moderator mentioned, sometimes we do either have the ability or kind of want to kind of play off of a question that was asked and use that for further discussion. So it kind of depends on the nature of the question and things. So for our public, please don't take it the wrong way if your question is not answered. We do hold the public comment periods open again for you to say whatever you want, but especially valuable is your feedback and input, and so thank you for that, moderator. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Thank you, Reza.
Thank you.
Mark,
Reza.
one other item of clarification, just for your knowledge and other people on in the attendees, is when we do public comment for items not on the agenda, as a committee, advisory committee, board, anything, we cannot make comment on those items because they're not on the agenda. The only thing that we're able to do at that point is make a motion to put it on a future agenda item in a future meeting. If it is a public comment in relation to an item that is agendaized on the current meeting, we are able to have conversation based on the guidance that Reza just gave.
Perfect.
Excellent reminder. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. And finally, when committee members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind you to mute your microphone. If I do detect background noise, I will mute your microphone for you. So just pay attention to your microphone in case it is muted and you're speaking. And with that, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mark, for that. So let's go ahead and go on to the next agenda item, which is 3.0, public comments for items not on the agenda, and considering items for future agendas. And based off of Lori and Reza's reminders, we welcome the public comment of things that are not on our current agenda for us to consider putting it on a future agenda. So Board BRN moderator, can you please open up the lines?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
And Mark, while we're waiting for this, I'm looking at the attendee list and I see Kim Doe, DAU, is an attendee, but she should be moved up to a participant. Kim, are you on?
She's been elevated.
Thanks. Kim, can you hear us? Great, thank you.
Garrett, Wendy Hansbrough, is she a panelist?
Yes, she needs to be elevated.
Okay. Sorry, she's not on my list. All right, I'm sorry, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Great. Well, welcome, Wendy and Kim. So great to see you. Let's move to agenda item 4.0. So 4.0 is review and vote on whether to approve the previous meeting minutes. The minutes have been posted in the meeting materials on the website. So I'd like to ask if there's any discussion from the committee members. I don't see anybody raising their hand. So generally I do, I'm sorry, does somebody have something?
I would like to check to see if we can see or hear Hazel Torres at this point. I heard from board staff that she should be good to go. So I'd like to test that. I see Hazel. We're not able to hear you, Hazel. We can hear you now. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm so sorry. Been having technical difficulties for a few minutes. And I apparently missed the roll call earlier too. Just wanted to say hi, I am here. And in relation to the minutes from last time, just a minor edit for my name to have DNP included into my credentials.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And then can we do a mic check on Wendy as well? Because I know that we just elevated her.
Yes, good afternoon. Actually, it's afternoon where I am. I'm on the East Coast. So yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay, so aside from Hazel's edit, were there any other edits? If not, so usually what I do is I'll introduce the agenda item, we'll have a discussion, then I'll have a motion, I need a second after that, then we open it up to public comment, then discuss after the public comment, and then vote. Is that still the correct order, Lori or Reza?
It is the correct order, except for items that are listed as information only. Information only, there will not be any vote or a second or a motion and a second or a vote. It would just be public comment, and then we'll move to the next agenda item.
Great, thank you. So given this is a review and vote, I guess I don't need to, I can go motion, a second, and then vote without public comment?
All agenda items need a public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll need a, sorry. I'll need a motion to approve the minutes with the edit.
I'll move to approve the minutes with Hazel's edit.
This is Tanya.
Thanks so much, Carmen.
Tanya Altman, I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Tanya. So public comment. Mark, can you open it up for public comment, please?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thanks, Mark. Great. Any final discussion before we go to the vote? Seeing none, let's go ahead and do a vote. So I will call your name and we'll have you give your vote. So Garrett Chan's votes yes. Janine Graves?
Yes.
Thank you, Janine. Tanya Altman?
Yes.
Thanks, Tanya. Tammy Vensholm? No,
Today.
that's right. Thanks. Linda Pham? I thought I saw Linda. Is Linda here? Yeah. Hi, Linda. For some reason, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we're not able to hear Linda either. So Linda, are you able to come off mute? It's showing that you are still on mute. It is now
I can't hear you.
You are off mute. Still not able to hear you. I will have board staff reach out and see if they can provide some technical assistance. Thank you, Linda.
Great. Thank you. Wendy Hansborough.
Have to abstain because I wasn't at the last meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wendy, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Saji de Guzman?
Yes.
Thanks, Saji. Kim Doe? Thanks, Kim. Hazel Torres?
Yes.
Thanks, Hazel. BBK is absent. Kathy Hughes? Thanks, Kathy. And Jacqueline Bowman? I didn't. Jacqueline,
We don't.
are you here?
We don't have her in attendance today as well.
Okay, thank you. Trying to look at 3 screens at the same time. Carmen Comsty? Sorry, Carmen. Thanks,
No worries.
Carmen. Karen Rozelle?
Yes.
Thanks, Karen. Joanne Spetz? Thanks, Joanne. And Sandra Miller?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So the minutes have been approved. Let's go to the next agenda item.
This meeting is being recorded.
Great. So agenda item 5.0 is information only, and it's a report from the BRN Executive Officer on updates of the board's actions and discussions related to nursing education and workforce issues. So Lori, please take it away.
Thank you, Garrett. So just a quick report out of the actions that the board has been doing related to your specific advisory committee. This will happen for each of our advisory committees so that you guys are in the know. This was actually a request from the chairs. So we decided, yes, we can definitely go ahead and implement this. BPC 2717 is part of our statute that requires the board to make a plan to address workforce. That was brought up in our last board meeting. There was a very robust discussion about it, and there will be more to come. Additionally, Joanne Spetz, that's on our advisory committee here, will be presenting at our May board meeting on the UCSF reports and data that she collects to help the board in this development of a plan. So that is a quick kind of rundown on workforce. As we look at education, what we're seeing as a trend right now, because of the fiscal impact of academia and growing nursing enrollment, we are seeing many, many requests for enrollment increases. And our board is working through that process of reviewing each one of the requests for enrollment increase, new campuses, new programs, and going through that process. The board has, up until this last board meeting, had only denied 1 enrollment increase request since 2018. And that was for, I believe, about 18 students that got denied on that request for Western Governors University. But this last board meeting, there were several denied that of schools that were trying to grow in some very clinically impacted areas. So our NECs are working diligently to pull as much data forward as they possibly can to help the board make database decisions, that because this is going to be kind of an ongoing issue through the next few years as we work with schools that are trying to grow to answer the future needs of our nursing population. So that will be interesting board meetings here forward. And then remember that prior to each board meeting, we do attempt to have an education licensing committee meeting where each one of these agenda items are discussed in detail. So we just recommend that the public join us for those education licensing committee meetings as well as our board meetings to provide the public comment that is needed so that our board can see the true impact of the decisions that are being made. So that's my update. I will open it up to discussion of the advisory committee here. If you guys have specific questions to me related to workforce and academia.
Lori, thank you so much for that report. I just, you and I in our planning meeting, we talked a little bit about the last open public comment for items not on the agenda about human trafficking, I believe was the topic. And I think you mentioned that there was some things that the BRN was doing on that, or am I misremembering? Because I could be misremembering.
No, I mean, so as part of that public comment that came through NEWAC, I believe that last meeting was for the members to hear for items that are not on the agenda. Your advisory committee at that point did not choose to agendaize it for a future meeting, but then in our planning meeting, we did discuss that. The trafficking issue is more of a nursing curriculum issue, as well as scope of practice and just kind of working through all of that kind of stuff. So they did reach out to me directly as the board's executive officer, and responding kind of back and forth. That was a few months ago. I haven't heard from them recently. And we'll just kind of have further discussion with that. I think what is important to note is that curriculum design lives within our nursing programs. We do not have a standard of what needs to be included in each of the areas that are taught down to that level of detail. What we do have is outlined in 16 CCR 1426 under the required curriculum. And in there, they talk about focus on patient-centered care. They've talked about looking at human sexuality. They also talk about client abuse and patient advocacy, legal, social, and ethical aspects of nursing. And all of that trafficking discussion can occur in any of those areas. It is up to the school to determine where they want to put that information in. They might find that that information fits best in a women's health, male repro kind of discussion. They may find that it lands better in a abuse section. It may even seem to the schools that they might find that it's more in a legal ethical aspect. And so again, because there is academic freedom at each one of our academic institutions, they build the content that goes into the curriculum that meets the curricular objectives that we have. And so that is a much more finite discussion that needs to happen probably with COADN and CACN to find out where they would want to best address that. But it is absolutely supported by the BRN within our curriculum guidance in 16 CCR 1426 that schools can and probably should include that.
Great, thanks so much, Lori. And I just wanted, thanks for sharing, because I wanted the public to know that we heard the request. You had been very responsive to the person who called in. And so I just want to show that, the BRN is responsive to public comments. And so thank you for talking with the caller and also making the connections potentially for Tammy. We can circle back with Tammy through the minutes, and then Tanya as our liaison to the California Association of Colleges of Nursing, and then Tammy Van Hol, who is our education representative for the California Organization of Associate Degree Nursing, that this was something that was brought up. And so for further conversations within those associations may be warranted. So, but I wanted to thank you, Lori, for reaching out and communicating and helping that person.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions for Lori as our executive officer?
Okay, if there are no questions, there is no vote or motion that is needed for this, we can open it up for public comment.
Great, let's do so. Thanks, Mark.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and will move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Great. Let's move on to the next agenda item, 6.0, discussion and possible action regarding the formation of subcommittees and the development of action plans for 2023 NEWAC meetings. So scrolling down to the materials in the meeting packet, one of the things that we did in our last meeting in December is that we formed two subcommittees. One is on simulation standards, which was required by statute that we look at simulation standards. And then the second subcommittee is on the workforce survey. So Sandra Miller and I are on the simulation standards subcommittee, and Joanne Spetz and Hazel Torres are on the workforce survey. So I think what I'd like to do is give an update, get updates of the work that has been done since the December meeting for the two subcommittees. And Sandra, would you like me to start, or would you like to start?
You can start, Garrett.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and get started with the simulation standards subcommittee. So Sandra and I have been very busy. I think we've met with close to 12 people from across the state of California who are simulation experts on the issue of simulation standards as outlined by the statutes. And so we've received a lot of great feedback, a lot of great opinions and perspectives. We are still in the phase of just collating that information. We met with groups as recently as 2 weeks ago. And so we're trying to wrap our head around all of the different perspectives. If there is anyone who is on this meeting as an attendee who would like to reach out to either Sandra or I to give additional perspectives, we would welcome the conversations with anybody who is interested in our topic.
Garrett, I'm going to jump in really quick. Reza, that would be in violation of Bagley-Keene. Is that correct?
The way I understood, are you inviting members of the public?
Members of this committee to reach out.
No, the public.
Oh, it was public? I thought I heard advisory committee members. Sorry. Thank you, Garrett. Sorry about that.
I thought it was like public stakeholders and interested parties.
I glitched.
That's okay.
I heard advisory members and I was like, wait. So thank you.
Nope, no problem. Thanks for keeping me honest. It's a hard job. So, well, we love our committee members. We don't want to talk to you. We want to talk with only the public. So, so anybody who is of the public, please feel free to reach out to Sandra or me, and we would love to talk to you. So we'll likely have our final recommendations by the next regularly scheduled meetings, which will be in September of this year. Sandra, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it, but we certainly appreciate all the folks that took time to talk with us over the past, couple or more than a couple weeks, but we received some very insightful information. So just wanted to thank those folks.
So
Garrett,
nothing for, oh yeah.
Really quick,
Yeah.
and it's a total interruption. Our board staff has reached out and asked if we can test Linda Fan's mic to see if she can participate. No. We can. Perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on,
Great,
Garrett.
thanks, Linda. Thank you. So just as a reassurance to the public, our work is still not done. There are no final recommendations today. And we're, again, trying to sift through all of the data that we've collected so far. So we hope to, if you would like to talk with us, again, we would love to hear from you. I would hope that we would get kind of all of our information by the end of April so that we can start pulling together the final recommendations to put forward to this group for discussion. So there's many other opportunities for the public to be involved, and we welcome that. And I guess, Lori, just because our emails are not necessarily available, is there a NEWAC email that somebody could send a message to the staff and then the staff could forward to Sandra or me, or how do you recommend that to happen? Oh, I'm sorry, for some reason I can't hear you.
There's a reason you couldn't hear me, Garrett. It's because I was on mute.
Oh, okay.
Yep. There is a NEWAC email box. I don't have it off the top of my head right now. In the meantime, what they can do is reach out directly to me. My email address and contact information is on the website. And what we will do moving forward is on our advisory committee page on our website, we will add contact information with that kind of standard email box there. That way, if the public does want to submit something for consideration, they can do it through that avenue. So we'll make that update, Garrett.
Thanks so much, Lori. That would be helpful. So I appreciate the staff's help with that. Given nothing else, what I like to do is I'd like to go to the next subcommittee and have Dr. Joanne Spetz and Dr. Hazel Torres give an update about the workforce survey work that their subcommittees are working on.
That is listed or that materials on item 7. So are we going to item 7 now, or should we be finishing?
No, Joanne, probably in the interest of time, we can skip your update here, go into formulating additional subcommittees, because I know that was an ask at the prior meeting when we ran out of time. And then we will get your update through the formal agenda item later on in today's meeting.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
Great. Thank you. So there were, we wanted to have time and space held open for other NEWAC committee members to start talking about and giving suggestions about future subcommittees that you would like to see. I'm trying to find my notes just to see if I can jog my memory. But here I found them. So we talked about workforce equity. We talked about cultural humility and DEI. We talked about workforce retention issues. We talked about clinical preparation. And kind of subtext to that was clinical education and educational equity. And that's what I wrote. And I didn't write down names next to it because there were great examples flying furiously. But I'm just curious if anybody else has any others that they wanted to put into the mix.
Remember that there was clinical impact and discussion around forming a group on that as well.
Thanks. I think I shorthand wrote it as educational equity, but that might be a better way to describe it.
So this is where members will decide what additional subcommittees they would like to form. And once that decision is made, we can have an appointment to those subcommittees of 2 people that would like to start the work on that. The next NEWAC committee is scheduled for the fall. So there is a lot of work that can be done in the time between now and the fall within these subcommittees to kind of move us forward. So please take a moment to consider what is of greatest importance to you all, and then who would like to participate on those subcommittees.
More about what you mean by educational equity?
What I wrote, and I think what Lori did a beautiful job in kind of explicating was, if I remember correctly, and these were the ideas that were generated by the committee members, is that it's hard to find clinical placements, and different institutions have different access and ease of securing clinical placements. And so I think that was the topic that was brought forward. But if anybody remembers mentioning it and wants to clarify my recollections, please feel free to do so.
This is Carmen Comsty. I think I was the one who brought up educational equity and specifically with the question of clinical placement. I think, the issue there, and, these could potentially be 2 separate things, because there's the issue of, access to education for diverse populations so that we can have a diverse RN workforce. And then there's the specific issue of, public schools, community colleges, not being able to access clinical placements, and the issue of clinical impaction. So I think those are 2 separate issues. I don't know how many subcommittees folks want to make, but I think they're a little bit different in terms of those issues around education, if that helps. Wendy.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Carmen. That's very helpful. Thanks.
I would like to ask if we can add a subcommittee on AI use in nursing education.
Further clarification on that, Saji, is that AI with simulation? Is that AI with test proctoring? Where do you think that the AI that you're referencing lives?
Right. So I think there are issues about going on right now regarding the use of AI, the ChatGPT, on submission of assignments and creating rubrics for use for nursing students. So I don't know if that can be an issue that we want to look at on how we are implementing or controlling AI as being used in nursing education, on how we are checking nursing students' paperwork. Or I'm actually speaking for the NP, or the nurse practitioner education, because this, especially for clinical decision making, this can be a safety issue with the use of AI if we are relying on the AI basing on nurse practitioner experiences. I mean, I don't know how much AI is being used nowadays in nursing education, and how the nursing students are doing their submissions of their assignments and their completion of their clinical works. So it's just something I want to bring up because it was brought up in one of the meetings from nurse practitioner faculties. I don't know if this can be something that we can bring up for subcommittee for discussion.
I think honestly, and I'll leave it up to the committee to kind of discuss a plan forward with this. AI is part of our everyday life now, and it's only going to be more part of it going forward. AI is used in remote test proctoring. AI is used in simulation. AI is used obviously now by people to write papers and turn in assignments and do clinical decision making, etc. So in regards to doing a formation of a subcommittee, although I do think that there is a huge benefit of that, I think it's too broad at this particular point. We might want to look at bringing up a agenda item in maybe our nursing practice board committee to talk about the implications, of AI around just kind of the board's role around that. Because I think it's going to be much more than just academia that affects, and it's going to cross all areas of academia. The other thing that I think we need to do with AI is look to the national level as well to see how NCSBN is addressing that, to see if there's any federal regulations around AI or law around AI. Because I think that that's where we'll end up having to kind of lead, is what kind of regulatory update may be required to manage AI and the implications of that moving forward. So although Sadia is an amazing topic, I don't know that there's a lot of work that can be done in the NEWAC committee specifically around that. Also, when you're kind of bringing it up to kind of talk about how you're doing it with like test prep and clinical judgment, that's going to be more at a policy area within your individual academic institutions, whether or not they're going to allow that, whether or not they're going to look at that as a form of an ethical or moral issue with like cheating or preparation and such. And the board cannot get involved in those specific policy decisions at each one of the academic institutions. So that's again why I asked you more for a clarification of what kind of you're looking more specifically for AI. So if you're looking at policy and how that's going to affect it, that would have to be happening at your academic institution as well as your clinical institution, if that's something that they are in support of. There are large healthcare organizations that are embracing AI and the use of it. And so I don't know that lives with us yet. I do think that it is a topic to start discussion. So I would love to bring that forward as a board committee agenda. And I would love to hold this one as a topic for a subcommittee for NEWAC for probably a future, once we get a little bit more input on this and see if there's something that we can do to address this from a regulatory standpoint, and if it truly does live within our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amazing topic. A lot of information going around on that right now. When I look at the meeting minutes that you guys approved today, I'll just kind of go through the discussion that was around some of these subcommittees. Carmen, you had mentioned that you suggested other subcommittee topics like workforce equity, cultural competency, diversity, debt traps, workforce retention, clinical preparation, associate degree programs, community colleges, tuition-free education. So those were the ones that were brought up by Carmen. I'm kind of scrolling through it. You guys all have this as part of your meeting materials. And those were the ones that are documented in here that were specifically brought up. Going back to that, in our sunset bill, the simulation standards was an absolute, and that has been addressed. Joanne did bring up the need to do the workforce survey, which is definitely there, and that's why it's on our agenda to follow. I know that our board would love to have some input on clinical placements, enrollment growth, inequity of growth between the community colleges and our private colleges and universities, on how we can kind of manage that without causing any hardships or any implication where the board looks like they're playing a favorite to community college over private institutions, because that has been kind of talked about in the last board meeting. And so I would love it if our NEWAC group would do something around enrollment growth, clinical placement kind of process. I think another subcommittee that could be of benefit is looking at pathway to nursing. How do we bring in a more diverse workforce population? How do you make nursing academia more attractive? I know one of the big discussions nationwide is the earn and learn and the apprenticeship process, and maybe looking at a CNA to LVN to ADN kind of 2+2 kind of process, and then working with clinical and academia partnership so that our students can get paid while they do their clinicals and get credit at an academic institution. There was a lot of discussion around diversity with that, saying that your more diverse and underserved population, including males, would be more apt to join into nursing through that academic process if there was some ability to work while going to school and receive pay during that point. And so that was kind of a big discussion as well. So I think that looking at entry and into nursing would be a fantastic, and looking at those various education pathways, either through an earn and learn, apprenticeship, et cetera. And then also looking at clinical displacement. But I think the other thing that would really be imperative to look at, which affects both academia and workforce, is that theory practice gap, the support of the nurse once they're hired after they complete their nursing program, looking at various kind of new grad orientation, et cetera, and support with that, because we do know that although California has 30,000 nursing students currently enrolled on an annual basis, that 33%, I believe, was the newest data that I was able to find, leave the field of nursing within about 2 years. And so although we continue to fill the pipeline, there's a hole that we need help plugging on the other end so that it doesn't continue to leave. So those might be of interest, that the subcommittees that you guys might consider as subcommittees to form, understanding that there are 2 people that can work on each one of these. So you guys have many opportunities to choose, probably 3 or 4 more subcommittees to be formed today.
Thanks. Oh, Carmen, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry, there's no raise hand function. I really like Melby's description of those 2 really those big issues. I think the clinical impaction, clinical placement issue. I think we really should have a subcommittee on it. I think it's more appropriate for maybe one of the education representatives to be on that subcommittee. So I don't want to say that I want to do that, even though it's super important. But on the workforce issues, on entry to practice, on retention, all of these things, I think that if we do form one, I don't know if we want 1 or 2 on workforce entry to practice and workforce retention, but I would love to participate and be on one of the workforce subcommittees. But yes, second, or I fully agree with Lori on having one on clinical placement, clinical education, that and whatnot. But I would love to also hear from some of the NEWAC members who are representing schools to see what they think.
Thanks so much, Carmen.
Deanne Sproul. I wonder if we could have a subcommittee, and maybe it goes under the workforce retention, but a subcommittee to look at faculty. And I mention that because in the Cal State system, I often hear from my peers that they are having to cancel a class because they can't find faculty.
I think that would be a great topic. Absolutely. There is a huge faculty crisis throughout the nation right now in nursing academia. I think that would live very appropriately within a subcommittee here on how to get, and again, that goes with our diversity, inclusion, and equity process too, because you want to have your faculty to be able to meet the needs of the community, and you want to see that expand as well. And when you look at the faculty demographics right now, it doesn't really show that transfer. So I would love to be able to support a subcommittee as well on faculty preparation and credentialing, etc. And then looking at, how to make that more appealing and more equitable. Because without faculty to support that, we don't have enrollment and growth. So that you have to have faculty to teach the students entering. That was absolutely correct. So it looks like we have 3 subcommittees right here that are up for discussion at this particular point: faculty, clinical impaction, and nursing retention, kind of in a nutshell. Is there any interest in maybe looking at regulatory updates for any of these? It doesn't have to live within this one, because we do have our regulatory analyst as well as our chief of Ledge attends these meetings as well. So if there is a regulatory update that needs to occur, we do have staff that can work on that. I just didn't know if anybody was kind of passionate about that kind of standpoint also.
Yeah, Lori, I would love to relook at Title 16, 1426. I think that there's some older language in 1426 around the curriculum. I just attended a meeting yesterday around what does the work look like for nurses, especially in the area of virtual care. And as I look at some of the regulations in 1426, I wonder if there are newer, more modern terms that we might want to consider that could definitely, in my opinion, be modernized. For example, there's a call out for med-surg nursing, right? Mm-hmm. And med-surg nursing is a very acute care term. And we have a lot of, nursing is doing different things outside of acute care. And so as I look at some of these terms, I just wonder if we should be looking at different terminology, because that would also help, academic institutions. And I've heard actually 2 deans reached out to me shortly after I was nominated to be the chair of MEWAC, and they brought this up as saying, med-surg is a very acute care term, and it also has an incredible impact on how their program is viewed. So I'm just conveying what I hear. I am not an academic, so I see some nodding and maybe some pushback. But I'm just saying that there are some things that should be investigated.
So I'll try to answer that in a kind of very broad term to provide a little direction here. We can do non-substantial changes to the regulations in a fairly easy manner. So if we're just kind of going to trading out a term that has similar meanings but is much more appropriately used now, That's an easy process. I don't know that we would need a subcommittee specifically on that. That can be, anybody can say, hey, you know, I saw that you see the term here, human sexuality, but I think really it should be, you know, sexuality and gender, and make that more diverse of a statement. Those are things that we can accept from anybody when they look at that, and we can broaden that out and do some updates that way, ask for updates to really show that we're looking at that. We have several pathways to that. We can do what's called a Form 100. We can also wait and see each legislative session. The legislative staff reaches out and says, what are some updates that you would like to see done to your statute, or anything that we can help you with that to modernize that. And that's absolutely something that we can do through that way. Again, not needing to take the time away and build a subcommittee around that, but absolutely anybody can provide any input on that. So Garrett, if you got that information, flip it to Marissa Clark. She's our chief of ledge, and we will take all of this into consideration. I have an amazing person that is leading that unit right now that we can get some movement. Some of those more ingrained terms like geriatrics, med surg, mental health, psych, OB, and peds, those are much more difficult to enact change. But the reason that I want to kind of address that now is let everybody know in this forum, which is what I've been doing in many other forums, is those are not anything to pigeonhole any of the academic institutions. Again, we have zero requirement for any of these clinicals to occur in an acute care setting. The only requirement related to schools that have to have any acute care kind of implication is in our business professions code for the startup of an academic institution with a nursing program. It requires a relationship with at least one acute care setting. Your clinicals, the way that those are laid out to meet the clinical objectives that each academic institution develops. So if you, as through your academic freedom and the curriculum development within your institution, have developed objectives that can only be met through an acute care setting, then your clinicals can only occur in acute care setting. If you develop your clinical objectives to be much more broad, so that they can be focused on public health, they can be focused in the community, they can be focused in outpatient centers, then that is absolutely something you can do. There is no limit put on by the board that says your objectives have to be this, they have to obtain this, and they can or cannot go into a community setting, outpatient setting, an acute care setting, et cetera. So we don't have any guidance around that. That is not within our regulatory oversight. It's also not within our statutory provisions, other than the one mention of having a relationship as an academic institution with a acute care entity. So when you put out these population focus, those specialty areas that fall under that are absolutely there and available for the schools within our current regulatory setup. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the curriculum is developed by the curriculum experts at the academic institutions and then ultimately approved by our board. But we are not the ones that are outlining specifics and how you're going to carry those out and how you're going to develop them and any of that. So 1426 stays very generic and very broad on purpose, because when you look at it from a community level, your student population is very diverse, your resources are diverse, your support is diverse, and only you at that academic institution understands what that is. What do you have the ability to support? What do you guys have the ability to develop? And how are your students going to respond to that? And that needs to be handled at that level. We are a regulatory oversight, which provides a basic framework, and you all at the academic institution really develops that, utilizing that framework to grow. So Curriculum can absolutely be a subject for a subcommittee. I think it would be fantastic. I know that there's a lot of talk about uniform curriculums, that are standard throughout the nation, et cetera, but I really want to kind of put out there that you can have a standardized curriculum from school to school, state to state, worldwide. It comes down to what are your resources to deliver and support that curriculum, and what is the diversity of your academic population that is going to be able to kind of traverse through that curriculum to be successful, because those are the points that need to be addressed more specifically at the community level.
Clarification, Lori, and apologies for jumping on. Yes, it is kind of, I missed the raise hand feature. But what I appreciate that clarification, and perhaps to tie it back to our initial question of which subcommittees would occur from NEWAC. That sounds like it might be, it would fit with the clinical placement subcommittee. What would you all think if we sort of broaden the application of what is written in the curriculum and the rubric and how it's interpreted in clinical practice? That might help address some of those conversations. And please let me know if I got that off base.
I think the curriculum could be part of the clinical impaction. I think that can I think a lot of these topics that you guys are breaking down, I mean, Garrett and Sandra are on simulation. That's all part of a clinical impaction discussion as well, right? And curriculum. So I think there's going to be a lot of overlap. But I think that there are going to be some nuanced topics that need to be discussed within a specific subcommittee and then brought back here. So I think a faculty subcommittee, a curricular subcommittee, a workforce retention subcommittee, and a clinical impaction subcommittee, those are the four that I've seen kind of discussed now, are absolutely ones that we can move forward. And then in the looking at time, we're less than an hour out. I would love to see a motion to accept those four subcommittees and have people that would be interested in serving to kind of volunteer on those four subcommittees so that we can get out to public comment and finalize this and move on to two more really important agenda items as well over the next 50 minutes, if anybody's in agreement with that.
Kathy Hughes, I just have a quick, because I kind of see more than four. I mean, I can see where some of them, like you're grouping things together.
Right.
I like the theory, practice, new grad orientation. I think that could be its own subcommittee. I know that, the more subcommittees might be a little burdensome, and then I'm looking at like cultural competency, DEI, diversity, the pathways to nursing, the earn and learn and apprenticeship. I'm wondering if I don't know if that could be part of the theory to practice gap or a separate. It just seems like those are two huge things.
They are.
We didn't even necessarily talk about at our previous meeting. Then I'm thinking that, to me, that's looking like more like six.
Yeah, I'm in support of that. So do we want to have anybody that would want to be a part of those subcommittees? This is where we would take volunteers. I know that 4 people in this group are kind of already tied up in their own subcommittees. So please don't hesitate to speak up.
So thankfully, I think that the raise hand button has just been added. It popped up on my toolbar.
Did it? Nice.
I have a process question. My recollection is that from the last meeting, we were advised that subcommittees could have a max of 2 advisory members on it. And so I just wanted to kind of to raise that again. So in terms of process, if we have more than 2 people interested in a particular subcommittee, what's the process for choosing participation?
That would be up to you guys, really. I know that that seems to be a concern right offhand. I don't know that that's going to be a concern as we go forward. We had very difficult time filling the 2 subcommittees right now. We'd have one that was like, yes, I want to do it. And then the other person was like, well, I'll help out because we need an additional person. I know that this is not your guys' primary role and job, but it is very important. And so we definitely want to take into consideration your ability to contribute to the subcommittees. So I think what we would do is if we have more than 2 people interested, those people can talk amongst themselves to see which one they believe is much more appropriate. And you guys as a work group here would be able to make that decision, because once you guys do this, there still has to be a vote, a motion, a second, public comment, and a vote for each one of these items.
So Lori, before we, and I think maybe I put this in the wrong order when we did the agenda, before we start jumping in and making final decisions about what the subcommittees are, agenda item number 8 is about interested parties meeting, which really was intended to be this really large group. And if we want the interested parties meeting to be related to one of these things, that might be another mechanism for us, because some of these that have been mentioned are super huge. And I think that this committee members would want to participate in these, but once we create a subcommittee, then they're excluded from the conversations until it comes back to this committee.
No. So I'll provide some clarification on that. You guys can be in attendance at any of these committees. Absolutely. It's that direct participation. So if Garrett, you and Joanne, I know, work together extensively outside of here. What you and Joanne cannot talk about is BRN workforce survey and BRN simulation. But you and Joanne can talk about other things. Absolutely. And both of you guys can attend information and seminars and such on simulation and on workforce data. Absolutely can. What we can't have the serial communication with that. So when we do the interested parties meeting, it's going to be agendized. Each one of you guys can attend that because you're going to be on the agenda and part of this, and you guys can have all of those discussions because it's going to be agendized. It's a public meeting, and there will be no concern with that at all, Garrett. And so agenda item 8.0 will just be to talk about if you guys want to do a interested parties meeting and what kind of availability you guys have for that. But every person on this NEWAC committee can be a part of that interested party meeting and have ample discussions because it will be agendized. So that is not a concern.
Right. I think maybe I miscommunicated. I was saying that the interested parties meeting, if you know, of agenda item 8.0 would be a time for all of us to participate in that. And so when I'm looking at things like clinical placements and impaction, having a subcommittee of 2 people just be the ones who are doing that without other people of NEWAC to be able to be in attendance in those meetings to talk about this particular issue limits the ability for people to be engaged from this committee in the topics. And that was my point.
So it doesn't, but that's a great point for you to bring up. So I'll provide some more clarification. These subcommittees allows for work to be done in between noticed meetings. It does not take away anything from this larger NEWAC at all.
Okay, but Lori, so I'm going to say, if I have information about clinical placements, and I'm not on the subcommittee, I cannot communicate to the subcommittee between the meetings. And that's my point. That's right. That's my point.
Formation of subcommittee or not, you can't, because clinical is part of the purview of NEWAC. So subcommittee formation and subcommittee work does not impact that. Garrett, you will not be able to have those discussions outside of an agendized meeting for you, more than you and one other person, ever, as part of this group. That's a Bagley-Keene violation. So the subcommittee allows for 2 people to meet and work on this extensively between meetings, come back to this meeting here, and then have a very robust, prepared discussion with everybody on here, where you then at that point, Garrett, can give that information. You can have that input, you can have that discussion, but you as a third person cannot have discussion whether a subcommittee is formed or not on this topic, because it falls under the work of the NEWAC, because it is education and workforce.
Right, but
So-
Lori, what you just said kind of contradicts the earlier example that you gave about simulation. So
No, you guys
we can attend.
Simulation overlaps in all of this. You guys cannot have those conversations outside of a notice public meeting.
Hazel, you have your hand up.
I see where I was going to ask earlier, how many subcommittees can I participate in? Because all of the mentioned or planned subcommittees are things that I'm very interested to hear about minimally or weigh in on. And I guess to tie in between subcommittee and calling them subcommittees versus interested parties meetings, because you mentioned, Lori, the interested parties meetings will be agendized, therefore will meet Bagley-Keene requirements. So
yes,
instead of forming more subcommittees, can we have more of those interested parties meeting that address?
We can't. It is a huge undertaking for board staff and board time to be able to hold multiple meetings. Subcommittees, as when Garrett and Sandra pointed out, they've held a handful of meetings already, 10, 15, whatever, with interested parties, with everybody as that group. None of those had to be agendized because they were gathering information, they were synthesizing, they're analyzing it, they're still working on it, they're reporting you guys back out on the progress here. That required zero work of our board staff and our board's resources, and allowed for a lot of progress to be made on that topic, and then brought forth here for a report out, letting you guys know that they're continuing to do more work. It's a focused group to be able to do that. For interested parties meetings, we have to get a WebEx secured. We have to get our board moderator, which is more than one. It is not just Mark that moderates this. So I have multiple staff associated with this. I have many layers of board staff and executive management assisting in IT and troubleshooting and getting everybody on, managing all of that. We then have to work with Department of Consumer Affairs. They come in and do a pre-meet. They get informed on everything that's going to be happening here. If we WebEx this, which we weren't, I don't believe we're able to WebEx this today, then it involves the WebEx detail that is through DCA as well that comes in. We have board's legal time right now. Reza Pejuhes is on here. I'm on here. These are very important positions that are participating in this advisory committee that is publicly posted and agendized, and we can be in compliance with Bagley-Keene. We do not have the ability to do that for every single interested party and every single subcommittee. It's just impossible, which is why you guys will take it on as a subcommittee to be able to meet with the various interested parties, gather the information, move that along in between these meetings. Now we did agree on putting the time and resources into an interested parties meeting, which will be discussed in 8.0, where we can hear more from the public. But that is why we have public comment on each one of these agendas as well. That's why we have public comment for items not on the agendas. We have 5 advisory groups that our board supports. We have 4 board committees that our board supports, and then our board meets at minimum 4 times a year as well. So there are multiple access to the board, multiple access to these ideas and getting public out there. And we want to support that. Subcommittees need to be formed in order for you guys to be able to focus on these individual topics so that work can be done between now and fall. And if there are additional topics that pop up at the interested parties meeting, we can bring that forward to the next NEWAC committee. You guys can find out where those topics need to lay. If there's subcommittees that already address them, if a new subcommittee needs to be made or one needs to be altered, and that can be done at that next meeting as well.
This is Reza.
Or Reza, I'm sorry, go ahead, Reza.
I wanted to add regarding the interested parties meetings, I think it does help to kind of know what goes into these meetings. These interested parties meetings, it's not as helpful as I anticipate it's going to be, and as the last one that we did was, it's not something we can do all the time, but presumably it could. It's not. This doesn't have to be the last one, but it's just I wouldn't expect it to be as simple as just as often as you feel it's necessary. But with that said, we'll talk more about that, and I wanted to talk about some of the options of how you can kind of structure that when we get to that agenda item. But just on the subcommittees, I wanted to kind of chime in on that it is understandable, and you'd be correct to see it as that you're subject to limitations. You indeed are subject to limitations, and they are restrictive, and they do kind of limit the ability. The whole purpose, of course, is that it serves kind of an alternative end of transparency and all that. I don't want to go too much into that, but the point I wanted to make is, as far as, when one committee member has input and valuable information regarding the topic of a subcommittee that they are not a member of, the forum to kind of present that and discuss that and all that is these meetings of the full NEWAC. Again, as infrequent as they are and as limiting as that may be, that's unfortunately how it is under the law, that these meetings where you're all gathered are the opportunities for the other members that are not members of a particular subcommittee to hear what that subcommittee has been up to in the interim and what they've learned and what they are reporting back, and B, to provide their own input and anything else that they want to. So ultimately, the topics that are delegated to these subcommittees, the subcommittee members are not the final authority on that on behalf of this entire committee. The committee still makes decisions and makes recommendations to the board on those topics. Those subcommittees just allow for, within the confines of Bagley-Keene, some work to be done in between meetings. And again, not in an ideal way that you might normally kind of conduct business if you were not part of state government, but that's kind of just the way it is. So again, I just wanted to reiterate the point that I really wanted to make, that you all have input and valuable information about all of these topics, and you have these meetings as a means to discuss those. And so, please chime in when you get the opportunity to bring up agenda items for a subsequent meeting, etc. So we can have those discussions during these meetings as necessary.
Thank you, Reza. Kathy?
I see a few things. One of them is, I think we could make a motion of, if what I would consider is making a motion that we have 6 subcommittees and list what I think those are what those are. Also, having to recognize that our NEWAC meetings are only 2 hours long, and the point of an interested parties meeting is an opportunity for us to kind of get into the weeds that we can't do in a 2-hour NEWAC meeting. So my question would be to Reza and to Lori would be, if we did an interested parties meeting that was just, okay, so like we determine what our 6 or however many subcommittees they are, who those official members are of those subcommittees, do a publicly noticed meeting where people could submit public comments in writing, so that then we're getting, if Garrett has something, like if I'm on the clinical impact committee, then Garrett could submit something in writing during this impact, the interested parties meeting. So then I have something to go back with to my subcommittee and say, okay, here are the 10 things that people sent to us regarding clinical placement or impact that we should consider in our working subcommittee work. Is that something we can do?
So I want to make sure I understood correctly. What I heard you describing is prior to the interested parties meeting, we'd give an opportunity for the public to submit their comments in writing. And of course, a big part of the BIB interested parties meeting is an opportunity for them to speak
right
their comments, but giving them an opportunity to send it in writing. But the piece I was unsure of is you mentioned Garrett submitting something as a member of the public. Is that kind of what you're, because if that's what you're saying, none of the advisory committee members are members of the public who can submit public comment in the way that anyone who's not a member of the committee can. You all are subject to sorry, go ahead.
So no, what I'm trying to say is at an interested parties meeting that's agendized and made open to the public, can't other NEWAC committee members participate in that meeting and make comments?
Yes. So this is kind of skipping a little bit ahead to 8.0, but it's, I'll mention what I wanted to bring up then now. So I think there's a couple of ways that you can structure it, and one that could allow that. If you want to set up and this is all kind of just being mindful of the Bagley-Keene restrictions and things, and that's where this is all coming from. One way to set up your interested parties meeting is to just hold it open to any comments or anything that anyone wants to say about any education and workforce nursing related issues. Again, more specifically, this has to do with the Bagley-Keene agenda requirements. So you would post an agenda that says we're going to consider any comment regarding anything in nursing, education, and workforce. If that's how you describe it, I don't think you've really described specific issues where NEWAC can kind of go into it and really have detailed discussions, other than saying, oh, that's a good topic, let's put that on a future meeting, or let's talk about that a little bit more to decide if we need to put that on a future meeting. The alternative is on the agenda, you can have kind of general comment on anything and also solicit comment on specific topics like displacement and like AI and like whatever specific topics you want. And if you've kind of specifically listed them, then I think the public is, again, with an eye to Bagley-Keene, the public is on notice that we're going to be talking about those specific issues. And I think you have a little more leeway to go into discussing those. Regardless, you can always talk about whatever comes up to the extent you need to discuss it to decide whether to put it on a future agenda. But to go beyond that, this kind of more specific topic should be detailed on the agenda. Hopefully that makes sense.
Right. So what I was envisioning is we determine what I'm going to say 6 because that's the number that sticks in my head and that's just my brain. So if we create 6 subcommittees, then when we agendized the interested parties meeting, I would say let's hold it open to the 6 topics. Like those are the top, or maybe it's only 3 topics, of those subcommittees that we're like, we really want public comment on, 3 bigger things or 3 of the 6 or whatever. That's kind of what I was envisioning, was a way for us and the public to really gather that information so that then we can bring it to our September meeting with, like Garrett was saying, we met with however many simulation experts. We're going to bring it back with more detail and been able to get that information, knowing that like clinical impact, there's, a bajillion people on the committee that have really important things to say about that. and we need to know what that is, but how can we do that and meet Bagley King? And could we do that and hold it agendize that in the interested parties? Thanks,
So I
Reza.
think the answer, I think you've kind of nailed it. I think you can set up the agenda, identifying the 6 topics, if that's what you land on, and also a general, invite to anything else that anyone wants to comment on. As always, they can. And then during the interested parties meeting, as Lori was saying earlier, it will be a noticed meeting. So you all will be there. You'll have the opportunity to discuss. And then you can come back in September with updates, if maybe a summary of what was kind of discussed at the interested parties meeting and any work that the subcommittees have done in between, etc. And then at the next meeting, again, as I said earlier, the other members of the committee who have input on areas that they're not on those subcommittees can bring them up. Again, assuming that topic is on the agenda. So work with your liaison and chair to get the topics of interest to you on the agendas. So, with the time you have, I'd suggest kind of nailing down what those topics are, making a motion on this, and I think you do still need to hear from the public as well.
The other option is Garrett, I know that you were concerned about forming these subcommittees until after the interested parties meeting. In the interest of time, it says discussion and possible action. We can have no action done today. We can go to public comment now and we can move forward. We do have 2 agenda items. I know that Joanne's agenda item is time specific. So I do want to make sure we have time for that. So I recommend either we do a motion right now to accept the subcommittees that were discussed, and we can read those off and get out to public comment, and then maybe get input on who might want to be part of those and present it at the interested parties meeting that would happen between now and the NEWAC's fall meeting. So at least that we can get some movement on this, but something needs to occur so that we can at least get to the next agenda item, because I know that Joanne's is time sensitive.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kathy, I want you to keep me honest here. So, what I have written down as the 6 are clinical placements and impaction, pathways to nursing, academic practice gap and new grad orientation, workforce retention, curriculum standards and guidelines. And I only have 5. So what is that? Somewhat close to what you have?
Yeah, I think just because there's so many words, I have workforce retention. I have you might have called it pathway to nursing. The cultural competency, diversity, pathway to nursing, earn and learn was kind of one big thing. I was calling it cultural diversity, cultural competency, diversity, pathway to nursing was 1. Clinical impact was 3. Faculty was 4. Curriculum was 5. And the theory, practice, gap, new grad orientation was 6. Was kind of how I was envisioning it. And
let's go with your list.
That would be my motion, that we have a faculty, clinical impact, workforce retention, curriculum, theory, practice, gap, which would include the new grad orientation, cultural competency, diversity, pathway to nursing. Would be the 6 subcommittees.
Okay, let's go with that. So that's the motion. Can I get Kim, I'm sorry, you have your hand up.
We're trying to move forward. I'm not trying to hold us back, but my one of the things I'm wondering is with the clinical impaction, if we should break that up into two so that there's pre-licensure clinical impaction and then there's advanced practice. I think that there's probably some different issues in each of those groups. That would be my proposal.
I would actually redirect that to keep that together. I know that it looks like it's different, but truly they are so similar. I think they could be handled within one subcommittee. And it would aid in moving this along. If at a later date, it does seem to be incredibly diverse and we have to have a separate subcommittee, we can do it at that point, or you guys can address them as separate topics within the same subcommittee. But I would recommend keeping it fairly kind of largely focused right now.
I think for me, the slightly different perspective is that if we have it as two subcommittees, then it allows for more NEWAC members to be engaged in the conversation. We don't know yet that there is difference. We don't know that there is similarity necessarily. So that would be
I can tell you from a regulatory standpoint, that is our jurisdiction. There are more similarities than not. And so again, I would recommend that we keep this focused, that we keep this small. If we're going to get out of hand on subcommittees, we're not going to be able to have members do that because then we're going to have serial communication. So we need to keep these groups small. We need to keep them focused. We need to move through this. We are 20 minutes from the end of our meeting here. I need you guys to understand that. We're not.
I understand it, Lori. And so let's move forward, but there is a modification. I mean, I don't know, Kim, if you want to make a formal motion to modify it and change it to two, but it's up to you to decide. And then I see, before I move on to Carmen.
I'm not sure exactly where we're at. Kathy listed six topics. Was that a formal motion?
That was my motion. My motion was her motion.
Before taking on any modifications or other motions, we need to determine, is there a second on Kathy's motion? And who's that? Carmen?
Carmen.
Okay. So before any other, modifications or amendments, we need to deal with that one. Knowing that if people want to talk about amendments or other ways to go about it, you'd have to vote down this motion. With that, can I read off the things just so we're clear? Or do we feel we're pretty clear on the categories?
No, go ahead and raise that.
Okay. Are we calling it clinical impact or clinical placements and impaction?
Clinical placements and impaction.
Okay. And Kathy, it's your motion, so let us know if you disagree. Cultural competency, diversity, pathway to nursing.
Yes.
Theory, practice, gap, and new grad orientation.
Yes.
Workforce retention, curriculum standards and guidelines, and faculty.
Yes.
Sounds good. Okay. So with that, I would suggest any last comments from the committee. Otherwise, take it to the public and vote on that one.
Carmen, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna. I think we should do the motion first. It was a comment related to Kim's.
Okay, great. Thanks. So let's open it up to, and you seconded it. So it's public comment. So Mark, can you please open it up for public comment?
Public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now we are in the final discussion before vote. So Carmen, did you want to speak?
Oh yeah, I generally I just wanted to say, you know, I think with the 6 that we've just moved on and the 2 that already exist for the subcommittees, you know, I agree that we should hold off in making more just because of the issue of, you know, I think there's 16 of us on NEWAC and you know, I think it may be a little bit cumbersome to have too many of them, and I don't want to get into the problem where people are in multiple subcommittees and then, you know, dealing with Bagley-Keene and making sure that we're not in violation of Bagley-Keene with people participating in multiple subcommittees. So yeah, I think just to put a flag on that before we add any additional subcommittees is important just to note, since we're already having concerns about making sure that we can all participate in all the various issues that I know everybody have very many opinions on.
We need a roll call vote.
I want to ask Kim if she wants to make any further comment before we do the vote.
Could you clarify how many members are on the NEWAC committee?
Right now, we have 16.
So for 2 people each subcommittee, then the ideal number is 8. We've just listed 6. There are 2 that are pre-existing, so that would be
8.
Okay.
Correct.
I have no further comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to a vote. So I vote yes. Janine Graves.
Yes.
Tanya Altman.
Yes.
Tammy Bentel is not here. Linda Pham.
Yes.
Thanks, Linda. Wendy Hansborough. Thanks, Wendy. Saji de Guzman.
Yes.
Thanks, Saji. Kim Do. Thanks, Kim. Hazel Torres.
Yes.
Thanks, Hazel. Barbara Barney Knox is absent. Kathy Hughes.
Kathy Hughes, yes.
Thanks, Kathy. Jacqueline Bowman is not on, I believe, absent. Carmen Comsty. Thanks, Carmen. Karen Rizal.
Yes.
Thanks, Karen. Joanne Spetz. Thanks, Joanne and Sandra Miller.
Yes.
Thanks, Sandra. Okay, thank you. And let's move in the interest of time to the next 7.0. 7.0 is discussion and possible action, review and discussion of potential changes to the 22-23 annual school survey and process for seeking community feedback. So Joanne and Hazel.
Garrett,
yes,
I'm sorry.
And we will.
Are
go
we
ahead.
not going to assign members to each subcommittee that we've just voted on?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ability to do that at this point. We will have to agendaize that within the next meeting. So we do need to move on to 7.0. We do have 15 minutes.
Okay, so start thinking about which ones you want to do. Start doing, first, second, third choices, and then we'll come back and do assignments later. Okay, thanks.
Maybe staff can reach out to the committee members and ask for their first, second choices, and then that would help us coordinate so it's streamlined the next time.
Absolutely.
Okay, Joanne, and Hazel, you're up.
All right, we are up. We are the Surveys, Data Committee, otherwise known as Nerds Are Us. We love data. So we are tasked with working on revisions for the annual school survey and for the annual or the biennial survey of registered nurses. The next one of that is due to go out in 2024. So the main content in our meeting materials proposes a process. And then there was some supplementary material that we imagine, given the date that it came out to you, you probably did not have time to look into and think about very much. So it provides some background, but we can agree to a process that does not take our meeting time for that. Overall, for the school survey, we need to have a revision of that survey completed for the purposes of fielding it, for the contractor to field it, which would be UCSF. Liesl Blosch is the project manager. And we need to have our changes agreed upon generally by early to mid-July so that we have time to program the changes into the system and have people test it before, and also to notify schools about changes that are coming so that they are able to prepare to gather data that might be different from what they've gathered in prior years. The supplementary document notes that over a decade, that survey went from 83 pages to 223 pages. We've whittled it down to 181. So opportunities to streamline and delete material are good. And adding new material without deleting other material is very much not appreciated by the deans and directors. I think the biggest question for us to all think about that we would really like feedback on, and that Hazel and I will seek community feedback about as well, is, and we'll seek feedback from Loretta Melby and other people at the board, of are there items that really truly nobody uses, right? Items that kind of have been added in because once upon a time it seemed like it was a good idea. The board doesn't really use it. The community doesn't really use it. We can get rid of it and deans and directors will be very happy. And what changes need to be made in order to address current concerns that are emerging that can inform the other subcommittees and so on. So the supplementary document highlights specific areas of that. We had a number of questions that were added related to the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on schools. Some of those items may still be relevant. Some of those items, it might be time to retire them out. Clinical simulation, a very extensive section on that was added in 2017. Should all of that be retained? Should things be altered? You know, what to keep, what to dump, what to change? Clinical placements and issues around losing clinical placements. Clearly, we have a subcommittee on it. That is an important issue. Are there changes to happen there? Clinical hours. Each year, there's very detailed information requested on clinical hours. Could that information be made more useful? And then anything else that we should be tracking that we are not, that would be valuable for the board and for stakeholders, because we know that many schools also use these data when they are writing grant applications or looking at potential for program improvement and benchmarking themselves against other schools. So it is valuable to a wide community. So what Hazel and I will propose in the interest of time is that we intend to interview and talk with people in the community. So this might include representatives of CODIN and CACN. There may be health system leaders that might be worth communicating with, basically community members that are none of you. And Hazel, what are some other organizations that came to mind? I'm kind of blanking. We have a list. Any come to your mind that are outside of those rough categories?
I think you brought the most important ones, CODIN, CACN, and our practice leaders, our hospital stakeholders.
Yeah. And this is one where I think Reza's guidance will be useful. In order to comply with Bagley-Keene, I assume that anybody on this committee who has input should not mail it to Hazel and me, because that would violate those requirements. So would the proper pathway for those to be sent to, say, Macaulay to compile and make publicly available before transmitting them to us? What would be an appropriate process for NEWAC members to provide input? Because that input needs to happen before our next meeting.
Right now, that would be to Macaulay. We'll send out some detailed information on how to receive that input. We'll send it out to the group, and then she'll be the holder of that. Thank you.
Great. And we invite public comment. So I think that, Loretta, would you prefer that be sent to Macaulay or sent directly to Hazel and me, since public comment does not violate Bagley-Keene to come directly to us?
Public comment to go directly to you would be fantastic.
Great. So public comment comes to us. So anybody in the public attending, I'm easy to find on email. Send me an email with your suggestions for the survey. The links are all in the agenda materials. And then Hazel and I will put together a summary document of what we find and move forward with the board directly. And so I don't know if we need a motion for that proposed process, but given the timing for this particular survey, that we cannot bring it back to the September meeting. That would be too late to get the survey out on time.
I know,
There will be
this
a
is Reza.
motion in a second on that. But yes, go ahead, Reza.
I'm just curious, I know we're short on time here, but if any committee members happen to have any substantive stuff that they wanted to bring up on this agenda item today,
We're happy to take it within the time constraints. Yeah.
I reviewed some of the. Can I speak? Sorry.
Yeah, Saji, this is Reza again. I'm just curious, how much do you have?
It's only one. The
Okay,
gender.
please.
We're promoting diversity, inclusion, and equity. Of course, we want the gender to be more specified instead of the binary definition in the survey. That's the only thing I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you. We had that on our radar. Thank you for that.
All right. This is Carmen. I had something, 30 seconds. Just a couple things that I think should be added is tuition and cost of attendance, a clear question on that. Some questions clearly asking about clinical impaction. I know we do clinical. You have questions on clinical hours and whatnot, and related questions, but maybe some clear questions on clinical impaction, and then faculty salary for part-time faculty. So since we have the full-time, also some corollary on part-time. That's it.
Thank you. Those are great ideas. Any others? All right. So Loretta will send out the process by which committee members can provide input. Take your time. It's a long survey. But please do send input within the next month so that we have ample time to incorporate it and then work with the board about making changes. And just to give you a heads up, the 2024 survey of nurses, those we will have time. I will request time on the next meeting agenda for us to discuss potential changes to that. The 2022 survey had a full page of questions about the pandemic, and those questions are probably going to be fairly irrelevant by 2024, maybe one or two survive. And that gives us a lot, in survey terms, a lot of real estate to use for other domains that may be important. So we will have materials prepared and available to you sufficiently early that we can hopefully have a discussion about that at the next meeting. You're on mute, Garrett.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm not sure if there is a motion. If there is a motion, what is the motion?
I don't know that we are need to have a motion. This may have been just an informational item, given that the process of approving survey changes rests with the board and not with the committee, per our contract terms.
Okay.
But Reza,
Yeah, I think
Reza is the legal expert.
Yeah, I think Joanne can take the feedback that was received so far, and I believe we still need to do a public comment on this one.
Yeah, I was just
yes,
going through my motion and second, and then public comment. So,
yeah,
given there's no motion, then let's move to public comment.
For public comment now, I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so there's no vote because there's no motion. So let's move to the last discussion and possible action, item number 8.0, regarding schedule an interested parties meeting in 2023 to discuss issues related to nursing education and workforce. And in the packet, you will see that we are having some suggested dates for interested parties meetings. I guess these are staff recommended dates because I know for me, I'm not available on June 1st. I guess we would want to hear from committee members about holding the interested parties dates as possibly June 1st or the 15th. Yeah, Karen.
Well, thank you. I think it's a great idea to have these interested parties. And I also wanted to just kind of loop in this committee with the work of the California Health Workforce Education and Training Council, which is also meeting that first part of June, and discusses workforce issues relating to nursing. So the council has been addressing behavioral health nursing, primary care, and one of the topics on the agenda will be a nursing workforce. Some of the things we've been looking at are some of the similar things like faculty. So I'm just sharing that that's an opportunity as well to gather public input on particular topics.
Great, thank you, Karen. Yeah.
Vote for Karen.
Let me check real quick, but I believe it is the next meeting of the council is June.
I think it
is June 7th and 8th. June 7th and 8th. So it falls into that same time frame.
So with Garrett not being able to do it on June 1st, June 15th might be the best bet for everybody if that is something you guys can do to clear your schedule, to be able to hear that meeting, have Garrett participate, and if you guys can agree on June 15th, we can move forward.
I see Hazel's hand up, I think.
excuse me, I was going to say, could we then just have it on June 15? And I don't know if this is somewhat related to this particular topic. Is it also possible to increase the length of time of our standing meetings, particularly the one coming up as well in October?
We can discuss that offline. That's not an agenda item here, so we can't discuss that, but our interested parties meeting would be longer. So we would have that much longer, and we can discuss the possibility of extending this out to maybe a 3-hour meeting for future, but I'll look at what we have available for resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Sandra, I think your hand up. Is that?
Yeah, are we still looking at this to be a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting? Because I think that would impact people's schedules.
We were wanting June because Bagley-Keene expires, the provision expires July, which is why we're narrowing it to June, so it could still be virtual. Okay. If there is a bill introduced now, if that bill goes through and gets voted in, we might have a virtual opportunity to do these going forward. But until that happens, we need to get this scheduled in June so it doesn't have to be in person.
Perfect. Thank you.
So
we do June 15th?
Yes, you can. And who is that?
I move that we do June 15th.
Thank you, Joanne.
It's Tanya Altman.
Perfect. Thank you. Board moderator, can we go out to public comment?
Public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, I would like to make a comment. Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Kathy Hughes. Oh, sorry. Kathy Hughes has been downgraded. Hold on. Welcome back, Kathy.
Kathy, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thanks.
Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Let's go ahead and move. If there's discussion, does anybody have anything to discuss? If not, I will move to the vote. Please raise your hand. Seeing no hand is raised, I'm going to call for the vote. So Garrett Chan, yes. Janine Graves?
Yes.
Thanks, Janine. Tanya Altman?
Yes.
Thanks, Tanya. Tammy Van Tol is not here. Linda Fan?
Yes.
Thanks, Linda. Wendy Hansborough?
Yes.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yes.
Saji de Guzman? Thanks, Saji. Kim Do?
Yes.
Thanks, Kim. Hazel Torres?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, Hazel. Barbara Barney Knox is absent. Kathy Hughes?
Kathy Hughes, yes.
Thanks, Kathy. Jacqueline Bowman is absent. Carmen Comsty? Thanks, Carmen. Karen Rizal?
Yes.
Thanks, Karen. Joanne Spetz? Thanks, Joanne and Sandra Miller.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Well, we're only 5 minutes over. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and I thank the public for joining. We couldn't do this without you, and we look forward to seeing people on the 15th of June for our interested parties meeting. So Thank you to the committee members for your hard work today.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.